Join me, Mark Windows, with Tony Hurst for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 PM GMT at autonomousmedia.net. Over the summer I met Harry Rhodes and experienced his cloud-busting machines. These are basically cylinders that contain mirrors and a silk, and he pointed them up at the sky, which was absolutely opaque with cloud, and within 10 minutes the whole sky was cleared. I was very sceptical, and this happened 3 times, so it's kind of convinced me that something was going on. I've looked into etheric energy, and I'm sure there is something in this. I mean, cloud busting has been known about. The work of William Reich also gets mentioned. But if there's anybody out there who knows more about this kind of technology and like to come on the show, please get in touch. This is the interview we did with Harry.
I got introduced to cloud busting about 3 to 3.5 years ago. It's one of them subjects you learn in life that you think, this is impossible. It's ridiculous, it sounds stupid, but it's like, it kept coming back at me, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go anyway. And then the result was absolutely unbelievable. It was spectacular. And when I deployed, this is the sort of effect we have. We've had forecast today 100% rain, and we've now got 100% sunshine, blue skies, and we look around in a circle in the distance. We've got rain clouds, and we've had them there all day, but for the last 4 hours now, we've had blue skies directly above us.
Harry, can you tell us what you mean by cloud busting?
Cloud busting is it's to do with the etheric energy that's in the atmosphere. Tesla talked about this etheric energy. It's everywhere. He learned everything that he did scientifically from the understanding and comprehension of ether, which is nobody can fully explain it. You can only prove that it does exist.
Now, the Victorians talked a lot about the etheric energy, didn't they? And in a way, that was all tied in to this expansion of ideas through spiritualism, wasn't it? When you go back into when we talk about the ether, you see.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that historically, when you look at ancient literature, there is this reference to this kind of basically something that's between everything. Can you explain it a bit more?
It's almost like opening doors to other forms of energy. Ether is not a form of energy that you can put your finger on and say, look, I can see it there physically. It's almost like radiation. In fact, one form of ether is radiation, or and it is affected, or it affects radiation as well.
And can you explain what or is?
Or is another form of organ or ether, if you like. It has 1 or 2 other dimensions. In fact, DOR, we call it DOR, which is like deadly organ. That's the black that you see in clouds. When the sun shines on, it stays black. It's a negative energy. It makes people ill. It's one of the biggest causes of illnesses as well, when you look at it. And that's how William Reich cured people of their illnesses. He dragged and sucked the door out using his organ equipment. And it sounds mad, it sounds ridiculous, it's like you need locking up. But the funny thing is, when you look into it and actually use the equipment and do it, everything you read actually happens the way they say it happens.
What you say does make sense to me, because I filled in some of the gaps, but a lot of people might find this incredible in the respect that you've got these metal tubes and you appear to be saying that you can control the weather. Can you explain a bit how this works?
Right, the weather is naturally controlled anyway by the sun, because he puts positive ions in the atmosphere. It also involves the use of negative ions as well. And what ether does, as Tesla said, ether controls electricity, magnetism, all energy, and that's what we do. We tap into it. And William Reich said something very interesting. He says it's a natural reset and healing of the atmosphere. So that's got to be a good thing, not a bad thing.
Now, these energy fields, from my point of view, I've studied this for quite a long time, with respect to altered states of consciousness and conscious awareness, and awareness of this etheric energy.
Yes.
It seems to be something that you can tune into. I've been involved in out-of-body experiences and projection for many years.
Right.
And within that framework of belief system, what you're saying actually makes complete sense to me. Now, you were here yesterday and it was raining, and basically that you seem to be able to create gaps in the clouds and clear the clouds. Now, can you explain what you were doing there?
Right, ether works on potentials. So a high etheric potential is black clouds, winds, rains, storms, lightning. That's a high etheric potential. Now, a low etheric potential is drought, desert conditions, plants that have died. So there's a potential between the two. Now on this equipment here, by spraying water in it, it creates a high potential. And we spray the water into the base and the tops. Now, you get a reaction between the high potential in the atmosphere and the low potential of the equipment, and the ether always delivers. And the ether flows from a low potential to a high potential. Now, that means you can decide whether you deploy it at high potential or a low potential. If you deploy this at a high potential into clouds, the etheric flows from the low potential atmosphere to the high potential, and so the clouds dissolve. And that's why we've been spraying water in this, and that's why the clouds have all disappeared.
So the difference between high and low potential is the amount of water that you're spraying into it, is that right?
Partially, yes. You don't generate any energy inside the apparatus. It reacts with the potential in the atmosphere. For example, if you were to point at the sun, which these react with a plasma deployment as well from the sun, you can get massive results. So it's quantum. Ether is actually quantum.
So, is this thing behind us a receiver or a projector of energy? What would you say it was?
It's both.
Yes.
It does too.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yes. And yes, you can either create a high or a low potential. It translates. That's why they're called translators.
Tell us a bit about other people around the world that are doing this. There seems to be a network of people.
Yes, we've got teams. We don't want to go into too much detail. We don't give names and addresses or anything like that. But for example, we've had 9 years of California droughts for many, many years before that as well. But as it turns out, we broke the drought in California. In fact, we had nearly 20 people deploying, and it was a massive change that took place. In fact, the very day we started deploying, that's when the rains came in, and it didn't stop for about 4 months. And we broke every rain record in California and every snow record. No farmers going bankrupt now. They're having massive crops that have been grown. And the same in the UK as well. We deployed, they said in February of this year, 2017, there is going to be a big drought this year. And we never had a drought. We started deploying, we broke rain records within a few days of the announcement of the drought. Now we've got bumper crops of potatoes, bumper crops of asparagus, bumper crops of all soft fruit and apples, bumper crops of cabbages and cauliflowers. In fact, Tesco, Lidl and Aldi and also Sainsbury's announced that they're slashing the prices because otherwise they've got to throw it all away. There's too much of it. That's a nice position to be in.
It is. So a lot of people hear stuff about weather modification. For instance, the term chemtrailing.
Yeah.
These weather modification programs seem to be a lot more complicated than a lot of people realise that they are. There's a blanket term called chemtrailing, but weather modification and this basically control of the ionosphere is beyond a lot of people's capacity. Do you know anything about it that you could explain simply what certain of these weather modification techniques are about?
Yeah, we've got HAARP in Alaska.
Yeah.
Billy Hayes is a person who actually was involved with building that and designing it, amongst others in a team. He built 7 of them, in fact built 8 of them, including Alaska. I've got a video recording of Billy Hayes saying, I don't realise what energy I've got here. I said, I'm sorry, I do. He says, oh right. He says, do you realise what you've got can knock out HAARP? And that's from the horse's mouth. On video I've got that. And,
you see, a lot of people would find that to be an incredible claim.
Yeah.
In the respect that HAARP is allegedly altering the ionosphere.
Yes.
Through massive electrical energy fields.
Yep.
And you're saying that this tube that you put a bit of water in can affect that?
Absolutely, 1000%. In fact, this is what NASA wants to do. The ionosphere causes problems for satellites and rockets. So they said they want to destroy and wipe out the ionosphere. Some of the things they've been doing is letting nuclear warheads off there. There's been hundreds of them let off up there because nuclear deployments actually affect the electronic field of the atmosphere. They've done that deliberately. But when HAARP kicks in, it pushes the atmosphere as much as 200 miles into outer space. And this is where they've made a big mistake. They use heaters to heat the atmosphere.
Yes.
Ether cools it down, and it also resets it. So they have no defence against that, and that's what Billy A said.
So you did a talk here today. People
Yes.
were generally receptive, and it's very, very interesting. How can we follow your work?
It's difficult not to go so public on this. The reason why we have done what we've done is because it sounds so stupid and ridiculous. We know nobody will believe it anyway, and that's a very good defence. But we are starting to get teams. If people want to get in touch with me, you can get a link from me and they can make contact with me. We have very, very well-run teams that are now making massive changes around the planet, and we are resetting the atmosphere. But everybody must stay in touch and deploy. It's highly disciplined, and if you don't want to do what we're asking, we don't want you on the team. People are allowed to deploy privately when they want to do chemtrails, knocking chemtrails out, and helping to reset the weather and bring natural weather back. We're not here doing weather modifications. We're here resetting back to a natural weather, and that's what the elites don't want.
I just want to testify that this morning we were scoffing, oh, where's Harry now? It's totally grey, totally raining. We thought, oh God, this isn't working at all. Then Harry comes on at 3 o'clock, right? Half an hour before, his Cloudbusters are set up, and it's all totally grey and totally raining, and nobody believes anything's going to happen. Then outside just when his talk is starting, his young assistant here calls me out and say, hey, look at that patch of blue in the sky, just exactly where his Cloudbuster is pointing. And I have to admit, yeah, that looks quite good. And then, as his talk progresses, the whole sky clears up. Lovely blue all over the sky. Now, if I've ever witnessed a miracle, that has to be it. So I feel that Harry here is a real disciple of Trevor James Constable, the great etheric weather pioneer in California, who first tweaked this stuff, didn't he, Harry?
He did, yes.
Yeah, and Harry's really learned stuff from the main assistant working with Trevor James Constable. What was his name?
Oh, he's one of them.
One
of
of
a gentleman. He would probably want to be mentioned.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
He's worked with Trevor for about 12 years.
So Harry really has learned this stuff from Trevor James Constable, and I think we've seen with our own eyes that it works.
I met Harry. I'll just go into this. I met Harry about a year ago. We started talking. And to be honest, when I met this guy, I thought it were a bit far-fetched. You know, he's showing me these devices, and I took one of these devices from his house. And I drove, about 100 and 120 miles to my house. And I ripped a line all the way down the UK and separated it. And the clouds I've seen, I can honestly say I've never seen out like it. And this is down to this guy. If we didn't have this guy, our weather in the UK would be shit, and I'll tell you that. That's down.
I'd like to make an apology, really. This is deadly serious, because these people spend millions of pounds predicting the weather, and I'm sorry at the Met Office, but you were wrong. Sorry about that.
Well, there's another guy giving a talk now who also says the Met Office is often wrong, as they are, indeed are, and that's Piers Corbyn. So
yes,
it was very good that he's coming after your talk. Thanks a lot, Harry.
I'd like to say one thing. Doug Johnson at the Met Office, I asked you a question live in front of an audience. Does the Met Office get involved with geoengineering? And he said categorically no. And when I looked on his CV, he did 6 weeks of ship tracks out in the Atlantic on weather modification. Thank you, Doug Johnson.
I'm very grateful that I got here in time to see Harry's demonstration, because I've known about cloudbusting since about 2004. And I became familiar with Wilhelm Reich's research then, because I was looking at the chemtrail issue, which Harry and I have been discussing. And so to come here today and witness this, I mean, when I actually started my talk, I think Harry, just a bit before Harry got here, the tent was, I could hardly be heard, because the tent was in the middle of a big downpour. We've got, canvas tent here. And then I think while I was doing my talk, I think it must have been while I was doing my talk, Harry had begun to set up his translators, I think you call them, don't you, rather than cloudbusters. And this is a new term to me, so I've learnt something today. And I think just after I'd finished my talk, or maybe it was just after Harry had finished his this afternoon, literally came out and there is a hole in the cloud. And it looks, I mean, it's hard to see now, but earlier on we appeared to have a circle of cloud right around the tent, basically, which is right next to where the translators have been set up. And Harry has been explaining in his talk how these things work, which has, broadened my understanding of some of which I already knew. And Harry's been doing some amazing work around the world from what he was saying in his talk, which I wasn't aware of, And particularly of interest to me was the work on the drought in California, which now has been broken. And I believe this man here was responsible for a large proportion of that, so if not all of it. So I was very interested to learn that as well. So really, I don't think there's a lot more for me to say, except that I think the elites do have this technology. They've weaponized it, and of course Harry and I had a short conversation after his talk about Hurricane Erin on 9/11. I always try and mention that because not many people know about it, where this hurricane was apparently steered and was part of the events of 9/11, and people need to find out about that. They can contact me through checktheevidence.com or other websites that are available too, of course, that have got some of this information, but it's largely been censored. And I think a lot of the work that Harry's been doing has also been censored, and we still always get this constant injection of the global warming, climate change trash, which is pretty much in every news bulletin in some shape or form, and that's just totally bogus. So don't buy it, folks, and do your own research.
We're looking for sponsors from self-employed small business sector, which, as we know, is being destroyed, and we cover this a lot on the show with the plans for regeneration, the soaring business rates, and the destruction of what we used to know as our environment, because we're finding that people now are being pushed out and socially engineered from the places that they need to be. We'd also like to appeal to individuals who might be able to donate. Now, the donate button on the site, you can just scroll down to the bottom of the page, and it's also on every article and every video on the site, on windowsontheworld.net. Now, I've never asked for any donations before, but things are getting a bit tighter for us, and we want to carry on and expand what we're doing. That's the most important thing, to expand what we're doing and be able to bring you much more information, which is very difficult at the moment because there's just a few of us. So, the bottom line is, if you can spare a few quid and enjoy what we're doing, press the donate button. We'll be very grateful. And if there's anybody out there, small businesses, who benefit from the sort of information that we put out, and we know there's quite a few because we've been contacted by them, if you'd like to make a small contribution or help out in any way, we'd be most grateful. That's the end of that, and we'll see you soon on Windows on the World. Join me, Mark Windows, with Tony Hurst for Windows on the World Live every Sunday 9 to 11 PM GMT at autonomousmedia.net.